Okay, we are live. Good morning from me, and
Good
good
evening from
evening
me.
for Jose here. um, Welcome back to Bocus Chasm, and this is, of course, episode 17 of Chasm Friends. I'm joined by my good friend Jose here from Jose's Amazing Worlds. Definitely should check out his channel and subscribe if you haven't. He's got a lot of great, fun content. And yeah, I love watching his channel and excited to have him on today. So I'll pass it over to him and let him tell you a little bit about himself. And then we're just like normal here. We just kind of chat and talk about all the fun things that we enjoy. So,
Well, thank you ever so much, Charles, for having me on. Thank you for accepting my auto invite to your Chess and Friends series. So I'm Jose. I live and come from Spain, even though I spent sort of all my formative years from 18 to 39 living in the UK. So I lived for 21 years there, got married there. My kids were born there, and it's only 3 years ago that we moved back to Spain. So I live in a small town here, and I've been reading fantasy ever since. Ever since I could, I've got knowledge. The first book I ever took out of the library was The Hobbit, and as a from my early teens and even before, um, I used to spend all my weekends playing Dungeons and Dragons, the role-playing game, second edition. I played the hell out of that game in all its variants. And when I discovered the Forgotten Realms books and the Dragonlance books, it was like, this is great. This is fantastic. And it's kind of shamefully and unashamedly say that I've never outgrown that part of my life. I've carried on with that even now. So hoping that my kids grow up and they can get them into the game and play with them.
oh, that's excellent. Yeah. That's interesting. Growing up, um, I was raised in a very strict religious household, and so D&D was a no-no. It was
Um,
so I didn't even get into I didn't even play Dungeons and Dragons for the first time until I was halfway through high school, and even then it wasn't as popular then because Magic the Gathering was all the thing.
okay.
So yeah.
Yeah, I remember. Obviously, I became aware of it much later on about the whole controversy in the US about it being some kind of satanic thing or
Yep.
something like that. And to be fair, like my parents, it took them a long time to understand the game, but their take was rather than me being out in the streets doing whatnot, possibly better if he's just in his room with some friends seemingly just rolling dice. That seems to be a better alternative than what some of the kids
Right.
from my class were doing. So there's that. But I love that game. To me, was I was talking last night with some of the people, with Chris Mohan, I think, how I was terrified of competitive games. I had like a almost pathological shame about losing. So I hated playing Monopoly. I hated playing on the arcades, Street Fighter against my friends. I just hated losing. I was really ashamed of it. And when I discovered Dungeons and Dragons, it was like, this is my thing. This is like, working together with people. That's what I really wanted to do. So for me, there was nothing else after I discovered role playing games.
Oh, that's awesome. And that makes perfect sense. And yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me that that's a better alternative than getting into trouble, in public and stuff. D&D is a
Yeah,
great
yeah.
alternative. So, yeah. I think there's much more of a stigma around it in the US than there is anywhere else. And I'm not sure why, but maybe it's the Puritan culture of the US that just, yeah.
Yeah, no, no, absolutely. That's what it is. But even because this must have been back in 2005, 2006, around that time. I was living in London or in the London area, and I met a group of people that used to play. So we were playing the 5th edition at the time, and every Saturday, I think it was. We used to go to a pub in London, and they had a function room upstairs that used to be empty because they only hire it out for parties or whatever. So the pub owner decided that possibly better than having it empty during the day, he wouldn't mind having 20 geeky, scuzzy-looking people just sitting up there, hidden away, but ordering burgers and beers throughout the day and let them play. And I remember, people would come into the function room looking to hire it, or they were being shown the pub around, and they would see us there on the table with the miniatures and the dice and everything. And they would ask, "Oh, so who's winning?" And the standard response, like, "Nah, we're all losers here."
Right.
But I really enjoyed it. I really looked forward to it. Like every Saturday morning, 12 o'clock, arrive at the pub, and we'll be there until 8 in the evening, and just spend the day, have your beers, have your food, and it's good times.
Oh, that's fantastic. Baron joined us. Hey, Baron, good to see you. Do you still play D&D?
Not D&D, but I think it's a couple of months ago through Discord, I fell down one of those rabbit holes, and I found a group where we play Call of Cthulhu, so based on the H.P. Lovecraft stories. So I did a mini scenario, and now I think it's next week, next Tuesday, I'm going to start a big campaign that is meant to take about possibly 2 years to complete it. And what I've found there is that a lot of the people that play are middle-aged dads like me. So we all meet like midweek on a Tuesday or a Wednesday at 10 o'clock in the evening, and we will play until midnight or midnight, because then the wives are in bed, the kids are in bed, we've done our family duties, and that's our time to geek out. So I'm quite excited to start that game next week.
That does sound like a lot of fun. Yeah. I've got, like, in my life right now, with everything being so busy, out of the box games are a lot easier to, just break out and play and then put the game away for the night and move on. But I mean, that does sound like a lot of fun.
It's not the same as the feeling of being around the table with people and having that physicality about it, and touching the dice, and but it's the only way to find like-minded people, particularly like me. You live in a small town, you're in your 40s, it's very difficult. You're going to introduce anyone to these games, whereas that gives you the facility to find people to play it. And what I discovered as well, I think something I mentioned last night, that your average fantasy reader, your average Dungeons and Dragons player, they tend to be slightly more intelligent people than your average person, because all of us that are down this rabbit hole, we're all big readers. To like these things, you're gonna be able to string a few sentences together, think cohesively, and have read, or you're interested in reading. So the conversations and the play acting, and every so often people will drop casual references to literature or movies or whatever, and everyone is like on point with it. It's quite nice to find that. Whereas normal, in my day-to-day life with some people, if I drop movie references or book references, it falls flat. I'm not saying I'm more intelligent than anyone else, but it's when you find people in your area of geekiness or fandom, it is quite rewarding to be able to have that exchange.
Yeah, I agree. I find that as well, that nerds and geeks in general, and board gamers and readers tend to be they tend to understand what I'm talking about.
I mean, there's going to be some level of intellectual curiosity to plow through 800 pages of whatever fantasy series you care to name, isn't it? And usually these
Absolutely.
people are also reading other stuff as well. So
Right.
there's that. Lesson for life, play role-playing games.
Absolutely. Hey, Shadia,
Shadia's
how
there.
are you?
She
Yeah,
was last
Shadia
night.
says, aren't we all book geeks?
Yeah. She was there last night because I had a live stream planned with Jolien, but she pulled out. So I just went live to say sorry, this is not going. But then Chris joined me, and we stayed there for 2 hours chatting, and Shadia was there as
Yeah,
well.
I caught the very tail end of it. I'm gonna have to go back and watch it. So, but
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, that sometimes happens, right? Spur of the moment thing, and you have to bring somebody else in. But that's good that somebody else was able to jump in with you.
yeah, absolutely. And we ended up talking about anything other than books and fantasy, whatever. We discovered we're both maths teachers, but working in different, with sort of different audiences there. But there was that shared common experience about teaching, and so it was really, really nice. And
That's
this
great.
the thing about Booktube, we both agree, is conversations like this, being able to connect with people like you,
Yes,
um, Chris, Julian, Steve, all the people that are willing to give up the time to just have casual chat.
exactly. That's for sure. Uh,
So,
Baron says, I want to teach Chaz to play Magic. Actually, that's funny, Baron, because I played Magic all through high school. Um, and then, stupid me, because they're worth a lot of money now, I got rid of all my cards. And then I got some new decks when my kids got old enough. I wanted to teach them to play. So I haven't played in a while, but I love Magic. Um, I Anonymous is here. Hey,
hey,
what
no,
were you going to ask, Jose?
no, like my oldest kid now is, and the kids in his class, they are into the Pokemon cards.
Oh,
Uh,
yes.
but but they're not playing the game. Like they don't know how to play the game. But he's, I don't know, he's collecting them, he's buying them, so maybe he'll make that jump into geekdom in a few months' time.
Oh yeah. My kids and I played the Pokemon card game for so many of their growing up years. And my daughter is still into it. My son not so much, but he likes playing Pokemon Go.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So,
Fair
but
enough.
yeah.
So what are you reading now? What's in your bedside table?
Yeah, so right now I am reading Halloween Party by Agatha Christie. It's
All right.
one of the Poirot novels. And then I've got I'm also slowly working through Baden Hill by I Anonymous. And I'm trying to remember and then I'm going to be eventually starting Turncoat for the Dresden series.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
What,
I've been reading one book a month on that series, and I'm probably going to finish it next year. Or at least finish it up to date. I think he's
so
spending like 25 books.
which book number is that?
That's book number 11.
Okay, I got book number 5 there on the shelf, but
Okay.
I'll read them. I don't know, one every 2 or 3 months or something like that, because I find so far, like, I don't hate them, but I'm not as excited as I was after the first two because they seem fairly formulaic.
Hmm.
Um, so I don't know. I wish it is something a little bit different, but he's always, he's a crap private detective. He's not a very good investigator. He always ends up calling some sort of otherworldly being to tell him what's going on, and he's doing some sort of ritual in his basement with that talking skull that is
Yeah.
telling him what a numbnuts he is. So they all feel little bit formulaic, but taken in small doses, I can see myself completing the series in the next, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 years or something like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've found that I'm much more likely to complete my reading goals every month if I have a at least one or two good palate cleansers, like really, really easy reads, not much investment, and Dresden's good for that.
Do you set, like, explicitly set reading goals every month?
Yes and no. I definitely do an MBR. I set goals for books I want to read, but sometimes I complete them and sometimes I don't. I'm a big mood reader, so if I don't feel like reading a book, I just set it down until I feel like reading it.
Yeah, because do you find that's you have you experienced like Booktube can be a bit of can have a slight negative impact on I've seen it on people where everyone is sort of not everyone like some people feel compelled to read more than they can and they end up burning out or they have to keep up with the professionals of the game like Daniel Green or Murphy or wherever these people are. And I think for me, luckily, because I got so many other things going on in my life, this is just a hobby, and I'm very aware of that. So I don't have that issue. But have you found yourself at some point feeling a little bit like that?
I sometimes feel like I'm kind of out of the loop and like I could do more to be like so and so over here, but at the end of the day, I just it's a hobby for me as well, and I'd just rather read what I enjoy. Um, Wheel of Time is a really big popular series, and Malazan's a really big popular series, and I shelved both of those for now. Like I started reading Malazan. I made a couple of attempts at Wheel of Time, and I made a video a while back about DNFing Wheel of Time, which I did, although it's kind of a soft DNF. I might pick it up again in a few years down the road, but there's so many other books that I'm more interested in reading
Yeah.
that I just don't feel like I want to get into a big chunky 15 book series. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I know Dresden's like 18 or 20 books eventually, but those are shorter, easy reads. So.
And it's a completely different story, isn't it? You can pick them and drop them whenever.
Yeah.
Even though I can see there's an overarching story to it, you're not as compelled to continue. I mean, I don't want to go into another Wheel of Time tirade. I'm gonna try not to, but don't like if you're not in a rush, don't worry about it. And if you don't ever read it or finish it, you're not missing much.
Yeah,
I've,
I've heard that from several people, and I enjoyed the first book. It was fine as fantasy books go, but it wasn't. It ended up not being something that I felt compelled to keep reading.
no. It's I was discussing this last night. The first book, it feels a bit Lord of the Rings derivative, but it feels like an okay fantasy book, and it's a bait and switch. Like the whole thing changes after. It's not. I've been trying to figure out for a long time why the series is so popular, and I haven't got a satisfactory answer. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I don't know. It's funny because, and this is probably an unpopular opinion, I feel more invested in Shannara than I do in the Wheel of Time series, which Shannara started off very derivative from Lord of the Rings as well, but it's gotten much more unique and it's easier too because each of the Shannara books are, each it's broken up into series. So you've got a trilogy here, a trilogy here, and you don't feel like you're reading this massive 30 book series, which it is.
That's what I was going to say. That it's a crazy ass long series, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't
Yeah.
know. I've got in November. I've got pending a conversation with Ian from B&B Books because we did the Wheel of Time read along together,
Uh-huh.
and we're gonna pick the next big series for next year, but we haven't decided which one it is. So I thought we'll do it live. We'll have a live conversation.
Well, that's a good idea.
I'll put for your usual suspects: Stormlight, Malazan, Sword of Truth, whatever else is there, and we'll discuss them from what little we know, and then we'll pick one to read together in 2023.
Mm-hmm.
But Shannara may be that little bit too long to do. But I get the feel around Booktube, everyone is too caught up on the most recent fantasy series. No one seems to be reading anything written prior to 2000 to put a date on it.
Yeah, I've found that to be the case too for the most part, and I love the older stuff. So I have never read the Dragonlance novels, but the Deathgate Cycle by Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman is highly underrated, and it's not talked about much. I love that. I'm planning on getting into the Drizzt books next year.
Right.
And I like mysteries and thrillers too. So I'm not up on what's current and popular really.
Yeah, I mean the Dragonlance and the Drizzt books, they are pure. It is pure Dungeons and Dragons. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Chronicles of the Dragonlance is actually a novelization of the campaign that Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman and Terry Phillips and the other people that created the world played. So those
Mm-hmm.
characters in the novels are the characters that they played as in the game.
Right.
So it's only, for me, the second trilogy is the better one, because they took the more interesting characters and did something with them. So for me, Legends as a trilogy is fantastic. Again, Drizzt is pure Dungeons and Dragons, and the evolution of the character and some of the characters that you encounter is, you can trace it to the evolution of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And then when in the game they introduce this new bunch of magicians, the psionics, all of a sudden psionics appear in the Drizzt series
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that. But I don't think they try to be anything they are not. It's just, it's an adventure. It's a fantasy adventure book. It doesn't try
Right.
to be clever. It doesn't try to make any, great character development, like something like A Song of Ice and Fire or Robin Hood or anything like that. It's just, just a good, fun, no nonsense, high fantasy adventure.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love those. I really do. It looks like he has a job where he can listen to audiobooks a lot. That's awesome. I technically could too, although I still tend to prefer reading, but like reading the not necessarily physical. I read ebooks too, but I haven't done that much with audiobooks except for Dresden. The Dresden audiobooks are really solid. He's got,
I've
yeah.
I've not tried audiobooks. I think audiobooks is not reading. I'm just gonna be controversial here.
Oh,
Um, like, because a couple of times, like when I've gone for a long run, I've tried to listen to some horror stories and stuff, and sometimes I just get lost in my own thoughts and I lose the thread of it. So if I struggle with a 40-minute story, I don't know that I've got the attention to listen to however many hours one of these big chunkers may last. Having said that, I'm quite hooked on recently with the Horror Hill podcast. So it's
okay.
just this. Are you familiar with it?
I haven't heard of it. No, I like podcasts though.
So Horror Hill is this guy, Jason Hill, and he narrates horror stories that people submit, so like semi-professional writers, and he does a fantastic production. He's a fantastic narrator, and the stories can be hit and miss, but the production value is brilliant. And sometimes when I'm in the car or I'm going for a long run, I just unload a couple of episodes and listen to it when I'm running or driving, and it's really good. Because to me, horror is quintessentially short story format. I don't understand Stephen King as a horror writer. Uh, short story is the medium for it.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. Discworld was anonymous palate cleanser. Yeah, I like Discworld as well. In fact, I think Chadia said that as well. Yeah, Chadia was saying that too. And by the way, folks, if I missed your comment, I apologize, but we'll probably get to most of them. Most of what I do are beta reads and proofreads. Okay, that's cool. That's very helpful for you to help people out with that too. So that's good. He's not a fan of either Shannara or Wheel of Time, I think is what he meant there. So
No, I think you see. I think people are too shy or too scared or too. I think we recognize that the Wheel of Time, sorry, is shit. It's just that you got Daniel Green out there drumming the drum of Wheel of Time, and there's a lot of sycophants there. If you stop to think about it and analyze it, it is a piece of garbage. And I've done, I did a video after I've read the whole blooming thing, and I did like a 20-minute video why the
yeah,
Wheel of Time sucks, right? And just gave all my reasons, blah 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 blah. And I have had fans of the Wheel of Time going, "You are right." They still like it, so that's okay because ultimately we are dealing with a subjective matter. But it's got a lot of shortcomings. There's a lot of wrong stuff with that series, and I think there's more and more people now that are coming to realize that it's actually not that good.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. And I don't know. I mean, since I haven't read the whole series, I can't really speak either way. But you may very well be right. And I think I remember watching that video of yours and hearing your thoughts on it, and I appreciated it. But we're in the minority as far as either not liking it or myself having DNF'd it. So
yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Although I was saying last night, I quite like the fact that possibly, back to my earlier point about readers being slightly more intelligent than your average person, that you can put an opinion out there that people disagree with and
mhm,
still have a very civil discourse around it, and it doesn't devolve into just name calling and insult exchanges. Sometimes in certain YouTube channels to do with something else, although every so often you find a gem of a thread where there's just two people going back and forth at each other, and it's that doesn't happen in Booktube.
right. Yeah, it is very rare, that's for sure. Yeah, I've only had one, and it was still pretty civil, but when I did my review for Shadow and Claw by Gene Wolfe, which I didn't really enjoy at all. There was one guy that kind of went back and forth with me, but it ended up being civil, like you said. So it's very rare that anything gets out of hand, and yeah, that it's a great community for that. Looks like Chadi is reading Daughter of the Empire by Feist and Words. Okay, that's cool. I read what was it, Magician's Apprentice
Oh,
by Feist, and it was fine, but I decided not to continue with the series. It didn't blow me away or anything. So
yeah.
I've heard
Although,
Janny Words is really good.
like my opinion's always been, but books, literature, uh, movies, whatever, that you need to have an understanding of the classics in order to really appreciate or have an informed appreciation of what you're reading now. Because I've seen some people spass out and think that Sanderson is the greatest thing because he's got this cosmere multiverse going on, and it's like, well, Michael Moorcock did that 40 years ago, right? He had all these different eternal champions in all these different settings and worlds and stuff. So Sanderson is not really that creative in that regard. But I don't know how many people these days would read something like Elric, which is actually not helped by the poor editing over the years.
Right. I have the first two. collector's editions, the new Elric versions, and
Or the
I'm
new
really,
big hardbacks that came
yeah,
out.
the new big hardbacks. I'm really looking forward to reading those because I've heard so many good things. And
I,
yeah,
I'm going through the Elric series, through the new from a few years ago, but the Golangs new collected editions, and I did a video where I was comparing the DAW editions from the 80s to the Golangs ones, because
mhm.
it's really hard to read Elric. It's such a mess. But I've got mixed emotions about it. I got mixed opinions about it because, I mean, even Moorcock said that he doesn't remember writing some of those books, or he wrote them in the space of 1 week.
Mm.
The guy, in the 60s in London, he was on acid for sure. Like there's some weird trippy stuff going on there. But it's more of an idea than a piece of work. I think it's probably only 60% realized. I think
Yeah, that
Moorcock,
makes sense.
himself said that he'd rather have one good idea with a poor execution than lots of bad ideas with a really good execution. And I think that, I think he was aware of what he was talking about.
Yeah, yeah, I can understand that. That's good. What was it again? He'd rather have a
One good idea,
one good
poor,
idea.
poorly
Poor
executed, than lots of bad ideas with a very good execution.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. That's a good thought for sure. Baron asked a question here: is Braille reading? That's a good question. I think it is.
Obviously, when I say audiobooks are not reading, they obviously got their place for people that are blind or have got, are visually impaired. Obviously, that is the way forward. And just for me, I don't know. I just feel it's like cheating, isn't it? I think when I read, I want to give it my full attention rather than be passively driving or doing something else and have it in the background. I mean,
Mm,
some people do the whole reading and listening at the same time. They will read the book
mm-hmm.
with the
I do
audiobook.
that sometimes.
I don't know. That sounds a bit too much for me.
Yeah. Chadia says for her audio is not reading, but it is taking in a story, so it's equal. Yeah, I can see that perspective for sure. Yeah. Baron said that Wheel of Time does in fact suck. So we've got another one on that.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, Baron, he's a clever man. He does put some good material out there. He knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, yeah, he does. So I noticed you every once in a while pick up your glass. What are you drinking today or tonight?
Well, tonight I'm on the rum and coke
Ah,
because sorry, Shadiago, you heard me tell this story last night. To cut a long story short, Chas, I had some health issues to do with my liver and nothing to do with my drinking, by the way, contrary to what it may seem. So
okay.
I was having some tests done, and they ordered a batch of tests on me. And when I went last month to see the doctor, she went, "No, your liver is fine." She said, "But you got celiac disease." And I was like, "Do I?" She was like, "Yeah, you do. Like your antibodies are through the roof." And I was like, well, I've been eating bread and drinking beer and eating pasta my whole life. Like I'm 42. She was
Yeah.
like, yeah, and you haven't got anemia and you haven't got this, you haven't got that. So let's repeat the test. All right. So 3 weeks later, I repeat the test. Antibodies are, off scale. Like literally, I'm over the limit. I'm 6 times over the positive test. I was like, okay, so I got celiac disease. So I go to the doctor. What do I do? She was like, "Well, I don't want to put you on the celiac diet because it's quite restrictive and you haven't got any symptoms related to it." So what do I do? So she was very non-committal. She's referred me to a different specialist, but she was like, "Well, in the meantime, reduce your gluten intake, your wheat intake." So I was like, "All right, okay." So I had a beer last night. So today I'm on the hard liquor.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know. surely leaving a condition untreated is not a clever thing to do. But like I said, for 42 years, I I've got no issues related to that, so I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, that's interesting to find that out after no issues and celiac disease. Yeah, that's a big
Yeah,
one.
no, it's not fun. It's not fun.
Yeah, yeah. I'm especially having to give up. Well, maybe not give up beer, but having to limit your beer. I'm like, I mean, I enjoy wine too, and I do enjoy liquor on occasion, uh, but I do really like my beer. I think I'd be in a bad way.
No, trust me. Like I obviously I spent my whole adult life in the UK, so I
Yeah.
had an appreciation for British ale and so on. So I don't drink, I wouldn't drink Budweiser, Coors, and
Oh,
any
yeah,
macro produced lager is a big no no.
yeah.
And then here in the town where I live, there's a little bar where they only sell craft beer. So they got 5 taps, and every week they bring new casks from different craft breweries, or they will import some Belgian beer and stuff like that. So I've got like a group of people, a group of dads from my son's class, and we meet like once a month, and we go out and we have a few beers and we have dinner and we have at the dad's night out. But if you take that away from me, man, that's like my social life revolves around beer in a
Right,
in a
exactly.
peculiar way. So when something is taken away from you rather than willingly given up, it's all the harder, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. Yeah, I'm the same. I don't enjoy the cheapo beers like Coors or anything like. In fact, I've never had a Coors in my life. Bud Light, none of them. I've never touched them. I do like the imports. I'm a big Guinness guy.
There you go.
Um, I'm a big. I enjoy Smithwick's as well. And Harp Log. I don't know if they. I haven't seen Harp in many years, so I don't know if they got rid of it or.
No, it's very Irish, isn't it?
Yeah. Hmm.
But I don't think many Irish people would drink harp over there. It's when I've been to Ireland a few times. Guinness is the thing, and then
Oh yeah.
they got Kilkenny, which is more like a red
Yeah.
ale,
Yeah. I'm
and
familiar with that
and
one as
then
well.
I don't think they're that big on lager there. But
Yeah.
yeah, and then
I
obviously
much prefer imports.
in the US, I mean, you've got a massive craft beer movement going on. Ever since Sierra Nevada came out, it was 20 years ago. It's
Hmm.
one of the best beers I've ever had.
Oh yeah, Sierra Nevada has some. They have quite a few really good beers. Sam Adams is one of my favorites,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
every October I buy a few cases of Sam Adams Oktoberfest before it goes out of season, so that I'm stocked for a while.
Very nice. I this summer gone. My wife and kids. I took them to the airport, sent them to London to stay with the grandparents. And I said to my wife, so I love your parents, got nothing against them. I can't stay for 3 weeks with them. And she was like, no, that's fine. So
Yeah.
then I took myself for 5 days to Belgium because I got a friend that lives there in Brussels, works in the European Commission. And I spent 5 days traveling around Belgium and just trying all the different Belgian beers there and the
Mm.
beer culture there. And I went to allegedly the best beer in the world, which is brewed at an abbey by Trappist monks, and you
Hmm.
can only buy the beer in the abbey over there. So it was like a 2 hour drive from Brussels, in the middle of Flanders fields. There's this abbey, and attached to it there's a shop and a restaurant, and they only make 3 different types of beer. And we sat there, we had a meal, had a couple of beers, and I mean, I don't know if it's the best beer in the world. I haven't drunk them all, but it was pretty good.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Oh, Jolene's here. I'm sorry, Yolene. I keep wanting to say Jolene. It's Yolene. Sorry about that. Um, And oh yeah, no chip shop to go to afterwards.
Oh
I have
dear.
not been to the UK yet, but I'm hoping to go to Ireland soon. So I'll definitely be getting some fresh Guinness while I'm there.
I I spent 2 summers of my life when I was a teenager working in a farm in County Mayo in the north of Ireland,
Hmm.
um, to improve my English, which at the time, the irony of it all was lost on me. So I was there with a family working in a farm, and they went to this bog. They had this bog away from the house where they had this kind of vegetable coal that
Uh-huh.
you dig it out from the bog, and it dries in the sun, and then you pick it up, you pile it up. So we used to go there to pick up turf. It was called kind of vegetable coal. Anyway, but the dad and the kids from the family, they would take these cans of Guinness and bury them in the bog to keep it cool.
Oh
So
yeah.
then halfway through the afternoon working there, you just dig up these cans of Guinness and just sit there and have a couple of pints of Guinness, and then, well, they went back to work. I was just like not good for nothing after that. But I do have a soft spot for Ireland. I've been there a few times, and
Yeah.
Northern Ireland as well. So
Yeah, that's great. I'm very much looking forward to going. I promised my kids that I would we'd all do a family trip to Ireland, and I told them I'd wait until they were both 18, because in the U.S. You can't drink until you're 21, but in most of UK it's 18. So
yeah, and if you come to Spain, they would even ask 16. Yeah, sure, no problem.
right. Oh, that's cool. And if they're with me, they probably wouldn't make a big deal of it anyway. Um, but yeah, I've always thought that was funny. Like pretty much everything else in the U.S. you can do at age 18. You can you can go into the military and fight and kill people at 18, but you can't drink until you're 21. That's kind of backwards, if you ask.
Yeah, a little bit, a little bit. I mean, we've got. I mean, going a little bit darker here, but I was listening to Spanish judge. He deals with like underage offenders and so on. He was making the case that apparently we allow underage teenagers to have sex, but they cannot have a cigarette afterwards. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, there are some inconsistencies in the legal system here as well.
Right. Yep. Very true. Chaz, will you be going to visiting Winterfell when you go? Well, yeah. Oh man, I would not pass up a chance to visit Winterfell. That's for sure. Um, but hopefully winter will not be coming when I visit there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think if you go there, I mean, Dublin is a great town, but the island is quite small. So if you can cross over into Northern Ireland and
Uh-huh.
visit Belfast, is a trip and a half. I tell you.
Oh, I bet.
Um, I when I was there, we went to visit where all the troubles were, all the Catholic neighborhood, and
Hmm.
the taxi drivers will give you a tour of all the murals and all the from the times of the conflict and all the civil unrest there, and it was gut wrenching, and there's still parts of the neighborhood that have got a gate, and the gate will close at midnight, and that's it. You cannot leave that part of town, and the Catholics still live there, and everyone around them is Protestant, and it was really hard to do that.
Oh, I bet so. Yeah. Yeah, I do want to visit. My plan is to rent a car and drive the entire island for a week and just maybe stay in a few bed and breakfasts and stay in some castles, different things like that.
Yeah.
So that's the
Now that
goal.
sounds like a great trip. That is a great trip.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and the and the Giant's Causeway is it's I've always wanted, the first time I saw a photo on my science book at school, like I wanted to visit. And when you go there, it is crazy.
Yeah. I can imagine. It's hard for him to decide if he prefers Spain or Ireland. Okay.
Well, I mean, because my wife, we moved here. She was what, 37 when we moved here. She never lived outside of London. All her family was there. And it's taken her a while to adjust. And she gets really irritated, and I share that, with the inefficiencies of the country. Here it's all about who you know. You're going to just go and do things through the normal channels. You need someone to. But I've always said to her, like, if Spain was run half efficiently like any other civilized European country, then everyone will want to live here, because we've got it all. We've got the good food, the good weather.
Mhm.
We've got it, and if everything worked fantastically well, then who would want to live, north of the Pyrenees? You're gonna have your give and take, isn't it? So we
Yeah.
we we take the weather and the food and everything else, and in exchange, you have to deal with inefficiencies and moody civil servants and stuff like that. Nothing is straightforward here.
Yeah. Yeah, I have heard that. I have heard that. Yeah. Well, one of these days I hope to travel more in Europe and things like that. And they say don't wait until you're don't wait until you're retired and stuff like that. But not everybody has that luxury. So, but I'm a big believer in memento mori.
Yeah,
You're dying, seize the moment and everything like that. But there's also the practical aspects of money, time.
yeah. Well, absolutely. I mean, and I mean it. I mean this in the most honest possible way. If you're ever anywhere near where I am, do let me know,
Oh, I definitely will.
and I'll happily take you to eat a proper paella, not what tourists eat when they come over here. Take you to the right places.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it. Yeah, I'll definitely let you know if I'm out that way. And Spain is on my bucket list. It's just Ireland is at the top. But
Have
I,
Have you got?
I
Is that for any? Have you got any family ties with any ancestry or something like that?
yeah, I do. I'm fourth generation Irish on my father's side. So yeah, my let's see, my great grandfather immigrated from Ireland to Canada actually, and then from there he moved down into the U.S. So yeah, I've got a lot of roots there, and I'm very proud of my Irish heritage.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's always, I don't know, caught my attention how in the US some people are particularly proud of their ancestry, even though, with all due respect, fourth generation Irish, you're barely brushed with the Irish
Yeah,
brush, are you? But no, but the people do carry that, and I think that's quite nice. Like, I don't know what to call my kids, because my wife, well, my wife's parents are Nigerian immigrants. She was,
okay.
born and raised in London.
Hmm.
My kids were born there, but now we're here. I'm not entirely sure what they are. People don't know what they are. When we first moved here, they came with a British passport, but now they got the Spanish passport, and no one knows whether they are British or Spanish. It's all a bit of a mess, and I don't know if it's just another way to mess them up when they grow up questioning their identity or what was going to happen going forward.
Yeah, I can see that, and anymore, I think most of the world anymore is more of a melting pot. It's uh, yeah, because a lot of the bloodlines have mixed and things like that. So it's hard to know anymore, like exactly heritage. Whereas when people kept more to themselves and they were much more, uh, uh, kept to their own, only marry within the Irish or the Scots or whatever, and which I don't think that way at all. But I think that's when the bloodlines were much more, people could tell, oh, he's from this clan or he's from, whatever. I definitely don't endorse that, but I think nowadays it is probably harder to know an exact lineage. Um,
Yeah.
so
No, no, absolutely. Even though, for obvious reasons, my kids do stick out here.
mhm.
We live in a small town in Spain, and
Okay.
then, working. My wife isn't exactly. She doesn't keep a low profile. She's this tall black lady with red braided hair and tattoos.
Oh, that's
So,
awesome. I love
so,
it.
so when so many times, it's happened. I'm stopped in the street, and people are these random strangers saying hello to my kids. And I say, who the fuck are you? Oh, they are. They know my wife. They are Miss Sarah's kids. It's like, well, yeah, they are. Who are you? Um, so yeah, I've been stopped at the beach, at the supermarket, sitting in a bar. It's a small town, and you know, we being teachers and looking the way they look, yeah, it's just it's gonna happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Chadia says just accept all the identities. Exactly. Yeah. Ultimately, it's embracing, uh, humanity. It doesn't matter the background or race or anything really. It's all about being human. So
Absolutely, absolutely.
yeah,
Still, I still had to deal with a couple of things with that, but at the moment, the kids are still still young. I'm not gonna take any massive issue for, with, with what a 6-year-old says to another, but
right.
I already had a slight issue with that. So I don't know. For now, I'm not too worried. In 5 years' time or 7 years' time, I may have to start beating some people up if things
Yeah,
like that happen again. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. That's true. It may become more of an issue as they get older and start having more problems, and that's really unfortunate that people uh, get so worked up about those, the color of someone's skin or their heritage or whatever, and they tend to bully people like that, and it's really unfortunate.
yeah. I mean, it's very. I try to explain to my wife. Obviously, coming from London, you see people of every shape and size and color and whatever,
Uh-huh.
and then you come to a small town in Spain where traditionally we have been the immigrants. To have immigrants coming into Spain is a rare thing, and the
Yeah,
kind of immigrants that we get is very different from the ones you get in Britain. We have a lot more people coming from South America. Maybe we have a lot more people coming from Eastern Europe. So
hmm
it's a different sort of thing. So I think at first when we moved, my wife felt a little bit too self-conscious, and it was tough adjusting. And then we got the bloody pandemic, and we got stuck at home for months on end, and it wasn't the easiest of times. But it's now it's going to be 4 years, and it's now when my wife has finally said, there's no regrets coming here, but long process.
Oh, I bet it has been. Yeah. Baron was asking if you have any recommendations for Spanish literature.
Uh, Plenty, but that's a whole other conversation, I suppose. I mean, debatably, you know, The Adventures of Don Quixote is the best book ever written. It's whether you want to dive into that, more modern stuff, I quite like. I don't know. I'll put it here in the chat. But there's this author. Um, he's been translated into English. Um, one of his best books is Defensive Master. That's been translated. I think there was a movie made out of it. He did the Dharma Club, which they did a movie with Johnny Depp. The Ninth Gate is based on one of his books as well, and he's got the whole A la Triste series, which is based on 17th century Spanish soldiers fighting in Flanders and so on. But that's too much.
Okay, so that's Arturo Perez Reverte.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay,
That's
yeah,
right.
I'm going to put that there in the public chat as well so everybody can look him up. Okay, interesting.
I mean, for a small country, we have a few Nobel Prize winners of literature, but you're not going to find any fantasy adventure or anything like that. It's more, your traditional, um, you know, non-fiction stuff.
Yeah, probably so. It is, but there is a lot more multicultural uh, works popping up in fantasy literature, but
Yes,
I can't think of any that I've seen from more of a Spanish culture yet.
this actually, at the moment, there's a lot going on in comics. There's a lot of Spanish, some writers, but particularly artists that are doing a lot of work in comics. One comic I would recommend big time. I did a review in my channel, one of the early videos, is Blacksad. It won an Eisner Award for best series and best artist, and the artist worked with Disney movies and so on. And Blacksad, artistically is a joy. It's just all the characters are animals, so they are sort of humanized animals. But the beauty of the magic of it is that they've chosen the animals that will have the characteristics of the person that they're meant to represent.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a 1930s private detective, so he's a black panther, black cat, but then he will walk into a bar and the bartender is a pig, and then automatically what what kind of bartender is trying to portray. You see a pig with a white beater and a dirty rag cleaning the counter, and it just visually is fantastic. And then you've got this sort of hard-boiled PI plot going on.
Okay.
So Blacksad, the comic, I strongly recommend that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll have to look into that. It sounds really interesting, and it really is unfortunate that there's not a lot in the way of novelizations, or at least not translated. I know Chadi was saying here we have a lot of Dutch fantasy authors over there, but they aren't translated, and that really is unfortunate. It does seem pretty rare to get a lot of translations. Andrzej Sapkowski was the obvious exception with the Witcher series, but it is true that not a lot of stuff seems to be translated and brought over into English.
Yeah, and I mean, but even within Europe, when I was in Belgium this summer, excuse me, I walked into a comic book store there, and the French, the Franco-Belgian tradition of comics is just second to none, and I saw so many really interesting looking comics that are all written in French that have never made it even into Spanish, let alone in English.
Oh, wow.
And it was a whole shop, and your DC Marvel section was this tiny corner of the shop, and everything else was like the national comics there, that I wish like I would have learned French, or I could read in French, because there were so many interesting looking things in there, and they've got their own thing going, and it just looked amazing. I guess, but I suppose you could say the same. How much manga makes a cross? I don't know. I'm not big into manga, but I know there's like 4 or 5 series that are hitting big, but how much more is there behind it that doesn't
Right.
make it?
Yeah, that's very true. That's a good point. I haven't really started reading any manga, although I've got a few that I want to start. But yeah, it seems like there's a whole lot more out there that probably doesn't make it over. You're right. It's not. It seems like anime is the vehicle of choice for bringing mangas to the worldwide public, and mangas tend to be lesser so, I guess. Um, not a lot of them get translated, which I think is probably very unfortunate. I'm sure there's some great ones out there.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm surprised. I'm tempted to do the collection as soon as I finish a couple of comic collections that I got going there. But surprised to see that Dragon Ball is still a big thing, because I remember being a kid. I must have been 10 or 11 years old watching the Dragon Ball cartoons when I was
Right.
a kid. And the manga's still selling, and the collected editions are still there. And I think there's still movies coming out and games coming out.
Hmm.
And that thing must be almost 40 years old by now,
Right.
and
Yeah.
and, and that's still going.
Yeah, and it's certainly not popular with the younger generation. It seems like I've mentioned Dragon Ball to my kids a couple of times, and they're like, "Dad, no, that's lame."
Really?
Yeah, yeah. Although they're both really big into anime, we watched a lot of the big ones together, like Attack on Titan and um, oh, what's the other? Oh, not Assassin's Creed. Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood.
What was
And
the first like manga anime movie you ever watched?
um, Akira, I think. Yeah.
'Cause my because that was the first time I saw that style of animation. My uncle took me to the cinema to watch Akira, and my mind was blown. I had never seen animation like that. I
Right.
it was I remember it to this day. It was totally, yeah, weird, and like the realism of it. Compared, I was used to the Hanna-Barbera cartoons of the 70s and 80s, and then when I saw that in the cinema,
Yeah.
it, it was an experience. And same with Ghost in the Shell.
Okay. Yeah. And I've still never seen Ghost in the Shell. Uh, I've heard it's really good though.
Yeah, I think I've got it on DVD there. I tried to watch it a couple of years ago, but it's a complicated. It's not an easy story to follow. You gotta give it your full attention.
Yeah, I can imagine. Uh, Chadi is with Sailor Moon.
Sailor Moon,
Nice.
Sailor Moon.
What one anime that's really unique, and I don't know if it's based off of a manga. I couldn't find anything on it, but it's um it's called Gonkutsu, and it's a kind of sci-fi with elements of cyberpunk retelling of the Count of Monte Cristo.
Right.
And it's really, really good, and the art style is just mind-blowing. But I never hear people talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not like I don't know much about it, but it seems to be the next, or like the new big thing, because from what I understand, like manga is outselling your classic comics in the US. Is outselling Marvel and DC by a big margin.
It is.
It's just that I need to start new comic collections. Like I need a new hole in the body at the moment. So
Right. That's my thing too. It's like I don't need to start these big collections. Um,
yeah,
I do want to maybe start reading Vinland Saga though, because I really enjoyed the first season of the anime, and I'd like to. I know a few people who really love the mangas, so I may check into that series.
right. Ooh, talking about watching then, because I sort of briefly touched on it last night. Have you been watching the recent fantasy adaptations like Rings of Power, Wheel of Time, House of the Dragon, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I definitely have. House of the Dragon is probably my favorite. Um, it just feels like going back to the glory. I've heard a lot of people say the glory days of Game of Thrones, and I think they're right. It definitely feels like that to me. Sandman is my next favorite, and then I'm really enjoying Rings of Power as well. But I I do have some reservations, but it's much more like Peter Jackson's Tolkien than it is actually Tolkien himself. But I still like it. It's still pretty good. I enjoyed the
Right.
finale.
I gave up on. No, it's not that. Yeah, I kind of lost interest with Rings of Power after 4 episodes.
Yeah.
It just wasn't clicking for me. I have forgotten about the Sandman because I read the comics
Hmm.
and I said to my wife, "Oh, we gotta watch this. Like, you gotta watch this because I've always found trying to explain what the Sandman is about to anyone is mission impossible. You
Yeah.
either gotta read it or watch it. I cannot convey what Sandman is about. But I don't know if the adaptation is obviously very well executed. The production values are great. I just don't know if it really worked for me. I don't know what it was. Um, I think the story obviously was meant to be told in the comic medium, and you can do things there that you cannot do on the screen.
Very true.
But it wasn't gripping me as much as the comics did.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I still prefer the comics overall for that series. But I thought it was a very well done adaptation for what they were able to do. Um, but yeah, it's kind of like that with other book adaptations too. You're never going to get as good of a story in most cases with an adaptation as you did in the book. So
I, yeah, I mean, there's obviously everyone's tastes are different, but I really rated, and I didn't get tired of The Walking Dead because
mm,
they introduced enough changes that even as a comic reader, I was engaged with it. They introduced a couple of new characters, they changed a couple of storylines, and there was enough to keep me really engaged with it. So I really enjoyed The Walking Dead. Um, Preacher was horrendous. I couldn't stomach that.
okay,
Um, and I think I probably got cancelled in the end. It was just like a really bad
yeah,
thing
that's one
there.
I never watched.
And the Wheel of Time, I watched the first season,
I did too.
and I'm not interested anymore in the rest. There was something wrong about. It felt a bit like you remember that Hercules and Sheena the Princess Warrior TV shows from the 90s.
I do.
It had that slightly too clean cut, too everyone was too clean, too polished, too I don't know. Didn't do it
Yeah.
for me.
I think in general, it seems like most of Amazon's productions are are a little bit too much like that. Um, with the exception of Good Omens, I thought Good Omens was fantastic, but but yeah, in general, it doesn't seem like Amazon quite has the quality up to par. And I think the only reason that Good Omens was so good was because Neil Gaiman was heavily involved. He's like, no, you're going to do this right, or I'm going to take it elsewhere.
Which is the same with Sandman.
Yeah,
He's clearly had a big input into what was going on there.
yeah, definitely.
Um, I think Lock and Key was on Netflix, wasn't it?
Yes. Uh-huh.
The one I did that was a good adaptation. I enjoyed that. But the bit I don't get is it looks like they're planning on a second season, but the comics are finished. The comics just told a complete story. So I don't understand what is it that they want to do after.
Yeah, they're so as far as I had heard, season 3 was the final season of Lock and Key. I have not read the graphic novels yet. I have all of them, including the Sandman crossover. I don't know if you read the Sandman crossover,
Yeah.
but I'm very curious to see what they did with it. Um, but yeah, I have not read those yet, so I can't really compare to the show. My daughter and I enjoyed the show for what it was, but it's not like one of my top shows or anything.
No, no, no. But I think I think that show was well executed. It did the right things. Certainly very, yeah, very enjoyable. I wasn't put off at any stage, whereas with all the others we've mentioned, yeah, eventually I don't know. I'm just not that big on TV shows. Maybe I lose interest quickly. Even with the boys, like my wife lost it, and after I don't think I finished season 2 of the boys.
Actually, I didn't either. I watched the first episode or two of The Boys. In fact, I might have fallen asleep in episode 2 of season 2. And then that, I haven't, I do want to go back and eventually finish it, but it's just not been high priority for me. Uh, we watch a lot of, we love the Umbrella Academy in our household. His Dark Materials, I think, is quite well done. Uh, and so we've enjoyed a lot of obscure series that get adapted that don't get talked about a whole lot. But
Yeah, I think Umbrella Academy. I watched 1 or 2 apps, and I was like, nah, not really. I didn't get it. I didn't understand the one. I'll tell you what. One that maybe a bit of a guilty pleasure, but the Gotham TV show, the
yes,
sort of yeah, the beginnings of Batman and all that kind of stuff. I enjoyed that. I watched that beginning to end, and
I did
I
too.
was I think it was good for what it tried to do.
I did too. I was really impressed with it. And Cameron Monaghan, wow, can that guy play the joke? Well, they didn't ever call him the Joker, but he was brilliant, I
Yeah,
thought. And I was actually kind of disappointed that he did not get cast as Fade Rotha in the second part of Dune. Uh, I think, uh, and granted, I grew up watching the original Dune movie from what's his name, David Lynch,
yeah,
and of course, Fade doesn't technically have bright red hair. I get that, but um, I don't know. I feel like Cameron Monaghan would have been a better choice for Fade, but that's my my one hang up. I love
yeah.
Dune though. I love the new movie.
I I don't know. I've again something I was saying last night. So sorry if anyone's watching again.
No, you're good.
That I'm happy to buy into dragons, elves, dwarves, all the fantasy you want to throw at me. I'm happy to get into it. Take me to outer space on the spaceships, and I'm like, nah, no, I can't. I don't know why. So Dune, I read, and funnily enough, I read Dune quite fittingly as I was on a trip around Egypt. But when I finished it, I've never felt compelled to pick up any of the subsequent books in the series.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I don't know why there's that disconnect.
I haven't picked up the other books in the series yet, but I am going to do I'm going to make a commitment to do that next year, especially with the you can see this edition of Dune right here on my shelf, and they're releasing Dune Messiah and Children of Dune in those same editions. So I'm eventually gonna read it. I'm pretty sure, but Yeah, I've only read the first book, so well, I've read it twice now. So um, yeah, I really like Dune. But you're right about Gotham. It was a fantastic show. It had a lot of great writing. It had a lot of so-so writing as well. Some episodes were better than others, but overall, it was quite well done, I thought. Um,
Yeah.
Chadia loved Xena.
I think maybe at the time I was too much into what was meant to be for boys and what was meant to be for girls. And so Sheena Princess Warrior is like, that's not for me. That's clearly for girls. Um, Something like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, like again, I thought that's for girls. And mostly, actually, when watching TV, if the production wasn't good, I just was not interested.
Yeah,
Um, if you're gonna do warriors and horses and sword fights and all, I want it to be properly done. If it looked cheap, I just was not interested.
yeah. I can understand that. I respect that for sure. I've been slowly watching through the Buffy and Angel shows, and I'm enjoying them. And maybe it's that campy part of me. I kind of like stuff like that, and it's kind of goes back to Dresden. I really like Dresden, and Buffy's a very similar storytelling style in some ways to Dresden. So.
Right.
But yeah, I can understand production quality is a big deal. We recently, last week, we watched the original Hellraiser, and
Oh God.
oh my God, it was awful. I mean,
Ah,
it I had just read Hellbound Heart for the first time, and then watched the movie, and I'm like, it was a good adaptation, but man, the production quality was. I mean, it was
those.
the '80s, so you got to forgive it a little bit.
Yeah, but you say that right, and you are spot on. But then you watch something like John Carpenter's The Thing, and that movie has not aged one day. It looks as good today
Okay.
as it did back in, I don't know, is it 82, The Thing or something like that?
Yeah.
And I think animatronics always age better than CGI. And I'm just having flashbacks of Hellraiser with that, the crappy thunderstorms and the lightning effects and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Oh, no, no, no.
Right.
Yeah.
Have you watched the new one yet?
No, I went, I think it was this summer gone, or a couple of years ago, but every so often I go through a spree of watching those classic horror movies from the 80s and before, like, Night of the Living Dead, Friday the 13th, and
Yeah.
all of those, and the original slasher movies. And they still hold up. Like the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it's great. It still looks good because I think sometimes when they got that low budget, they make things realistic um, in a way that ages well because they didn't have the budget to do any CGI,
Right.
so it forces you to get a bit more creative. Um, Whereas things like Van Helsing, the movie with Hugh Jackman,
Oh yeah.
the
Yeah, I saw
the
it.
the werewolves look like crap now, and to think that that came after Lord of the Rings, um, whereas Lord of the Rings has aged pretty well, I
It
think.
has. Yeah.
But no, I'm very fond of those original horror movies. Even the original Nightmare on Elm Street still looks good, um, and all the stuff. I watched this summer gone, the latest Friday the 13th, I think it was.
Yeah.
No, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. They did,
Okay.
and then there's the Halloween final chapter coming out again.
Okay.
So I'm very fond of those movies.
That's cool. I never really watched any horror as a teen, and so I'm getting more into it now and watching a lot of these things for the first time because both my kids, my daughter especially, is really into horror. Sam is her favorite from Trick or Treat. So we're we're eventually going to go. They're re-releasing Trick or Treat in the theater, so she wants to go see it. I'm like, okay, yeah, we'll go see it. But
Yeah.
I haven't been much into horror except in recent years. So
Oh, I mean, I really got into it when I was at university. Um, and unfortunately, I think in my second year at university, I was diagnosed with epilepsy. So then drinking was out of the question. And if you're going to drink while you're at university, kind of your social life takes a bit of a, 7 steps back, right?
right,
But then I really got into cinema because they used to run there was a student run cinema that was really cheap. It was like £2 a movie. And on the Wednesdays, I think it was Wednesdays at midnight, something like that, they would do a horror movie.
okay,
And in my hall of residence, there was this kid, can't remember his name. He never talked to, it was, the proper computer geek that stayed in his room, you know, the really thick glasses and the, greasy ginger hair, slightly mousy looking. And we discovered that he actually was into horror movies. So, he was ticking all the boxes for serial killer a few
right,
years down the road. So then my girlfriend and I were like, oh, you want to come and watch these movies? And it was the only time that he would socialize with anyone, which was to go to the cinema at midnight Wednesdays and watch all these classic horror movies. And that's when I really got into it. And when I watched all those classics, and I really, really enjoy them.
yeah, that's cool. I'll probably eventually get through a lot of them, but finding the time, right? We're
Yeah.
we're trying to watch a lot of them in October since it's spooky month. So yeah, I'm eventually gonna work through all of them. But um, Chadi was asking if you've seen House of the Dragon.
No, I haven't got an HBO subscription, so no. I don't know that I'm not curious about it.
Hmm.
And also, I think now I cannot be bothered to wait between seasons. It's almost like I'd rather wait for it to be done and then be
Yeah,
able to watch them. Because I think I even when I started watching Game of Thrones, it was around season 6, so then
yeah,
I could sort of watch it back to back.
yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. It is nicer to have completed series and not have to wait. Even so with books, it's kind of nice for it to all be complete as long as. But if there's a lot of books in the series and it'll take you a while to get there, then it's fine. But yeah, it's nice to have completed series too.
Absolutely. I think the only series I've got going where I've caught up with the author is Gentlemen Bastards. And
Hmm.
I'm quite annoyed because that's meant to be like a 7 or 8 book series. And Scott Lynch has had a lot of personal issues and stuff like that. But I think the last book was published 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And I cannot be bothered to wait so long in between books.
Hmm.
And probably that's one reason also I'm reluctant to pick up Patrick Rothfuss. I'm curious about what's the hype behind what's it called, King Killer, right?
Right.
But I don't want to read the first 2 books and then be left hanging for another so many years. Um,
I
I
can
think
understand
the only author I would trust is Brandon Sanderson, isn't
that.
it? The guy's a
Yeah.
maniac, but
Yeah,
um,
he is. Yeah, he's always. Yeah, what some people call him Sanderbot. He's because he cranks things out like a robot. And I think
but
he's starting to feel it now too, because I don't know if you've heard the recent announcement, but apparently he's bringing on his friend Dan Wells to co-author some Cosmere books with him because it's getting just too convoluted and things like that. I don't really care for that idea, but I wish him well with it.
well, I mean, I don't know. I'm not against necessarily collaborative world creation, because I come from the Dungeons and Dragons sort of school where you had so many authors contributing to the Forgotten Realms that
Yeah.
you pick and choose what you want to read. Same as with Dragonlance, there's about 100 Dragonlance novels, and you can stick to the core, or if you really like it, you can branch out, and different people take you different places. Same with Malazan, isn't it? You've got Steven Erickson and what's his name, Ian Esselmount.
Right.
And I made this mock video about people that are not reading Malazan properly, because even Steven Erickson has come out to say you should read the novels in publication order, whether they come from him or from Esselmount. Yet everyone seems to read the core 10 from Erickson and see the rest as optional. Like, I don't know enough about the world, and people tell me that you shouldn't do that. You should stick to the core Erickson novels and then branch out. So I don't necessarily have an issue with that. But then it makes you think whether Sanderson has become some kind of, he's a brand now, whether Cosmere is a brand instead of his own thing.
That's true. You make a good point with that. I didn't think of it in those terms, but you're right. He's become so large that it's almost a brand. Yeah.
And I, he was like super successful with his, what was it? Not GoFund, but the crowdfunding thing he did for.
Yeah.
And I saw some people criticize him for doing a crowdfunding. I don't understand that. But I don't know. I kind of fault him, but I don't know if the intent there is for these new guys' novels to be as important in the world as his are, or they're meant to be treated as canon as his. I don't know what the deal is. I don't know enough.
Yeah, I don't know enough either. I'm sure we'll hear more eventually. It does sound like they're going to be co-authored, so Brandon's still going to work on it, but they're going to like write books together. So it'll be interesting to find out. I'd love to be a fly on the wall to hear those conversations.
This. I mean, it wouldn't. And I'd rather they come clean and say this is what's going on.
Yeah.
Because it wouldn't be the first author. Like, there's always been rumors about Ken Follett not actually writing some of his books. Like, he's the ideas guy, and then he will give some ghostwriter like the main points, or like he will just sketch out what the story is, and he will have ghostwriters actually writing the story.
Yeah, so, James Patterson is the same way.
Yeah, so whether Sanderson is actually going to do that, but I'd rather, I'll appreciate the honesty of saying, hey, I've had the idea, I've given him a 20-page summary of what the story is, and this guy's going to write it, and then that's up to people to take it or leave it. So I think better that than pretend that he's writing everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, at least he is being pretty upfront and honest about it with what's going on. I'm sure we'll get more details eventually. But yeah. Baron was saying so back to Lock and Key, saying he needs the head key. Yeah, finally being able to understand your wife. I get that, man. I'd love to have the head key for my kids to figure out what's going on there.
I think that's mission impossible, isn't it? It's the weirdest thing in the world to one day decide that you're going to spend the rest of your life with this person. That is not even, because I think if we all married a cousin, at least everything will stay in the family, right? It'll be a lot easier to handle it when there are issues. But this person that all of a sudden one day you decide you're going to spend the rest of your life with, and people change. And who you are before kids and after kids is a major change, So
it is.
It's almost like marriage should be like football contracts every 5 years. you renew, and if you perform well, we'll upgrade the terms, and if you haven't performed well, we'll downgrade the terms of the contract. I don't know, not a popular take, I'm
Yeah,
guessing here.
that's funny though. I like it. That's pretty hilarious. Yeah, good luck with that one. But
Yeah. I'm guessing
uh,
my Sarah's now listening on the wall there, and she'll tell
oh
me off
right.
later.
She's like, "What did you say? Five
Yeah,
years only?"
yeah. I know, but I don't know if Baron has got kids, but you know full well that your life before kids and after kids is totally different, and let alone because the first one, at least you take it in turns, but two, you're operating in a completely parallel reality. It's a totally different life, um,
Yeah, it
and the
definitely is.
and the relationship changes dramatically, and it's a tough adjustment.
Yeah, yeah. It's so many changes that you're signing up for when you have kids and spouse and everyone to look after. So yeah, it's
I mean, I don't know if my case is the norm or not, but I think I lost count as to how many times Sarah wanted to walk out on us in the first year of our first son being born. Like everything was so turned on its head. I don't think, I don't know how many people adjust easily to that. It's a tough process, and there's no manual, isn't it? There's a lot of all these antenatal courses. It's all about getting ready for birthday, and actually, that just you just go through it. You just go through it. It's when you go home with the baby, and then just the two of you and the little baby there. You go like, how do you do this? Like, what now?
right. Yeah, it's definitely very life altering and it yeah, and it can cause problems. You're not used to being with this person on a regular basis and living together, and it's a whole different ball game. But
Yeah,
Jim says if the quality is the same, I'm fine with Sanderson having a co-author. Yeah, exactly. As long as the quality is the same, it'll probably be okay. Um, Stephen King and Peter Straub. I have not read any of their co-authored books. Have you, Jose?
no. I'm not the biggest Stephen King fan out there, even though I've got like 8 or 9 of his books. So I'm not overly keen. I think I've read all the Stephen King I ever wanted to read.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but collaborations they are tricky. You read we were talking about it before. Good Omens,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because in Good Omens, for me, having read the whole of Discworld, was very easy to pick out the passages that were written by Terry Pratchett.
Right.
And I don't know whether in these other collaborations there's a more concerted effort to give a bit more narrative cohesion to the whole thing, or not. But again, they're open about it. We're writing this together, and you go like, fine. It is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's got to be a huge challenge to co-author with someone. I think. Um, I know with the Expanse books, that's a co-author team, and I just can't imagine all the work that goes into that, trying to keep everything straight.
I tell you who I wish got a co-author, but I'll never do it. It's George Martin.
Oh,
I wish he would finish A Song of Ice and Fire.
I do too.
I even gave him a suggestion. I've got the perfect team to do it. I think he should get John Gwynne and Joe Abercrombie together. I think those two together are the perfect combination to finish A Song of Ice and Fire.
Hey, that's good. I have not read John Gwynne yet. I will be fixing that shortly, but I do like Joe Abercrombie a lot. Um, his uh, he's perfection when it comes to like like dialogue, in my opinion, like character dialogues and just witty banter and all that. I think,
I mean, that was precisely my point. Like, imagine what Joe Abercrombie could do with a character like Tyrion,
hmm
and then John Wynne. I've only read The Faithful and the Fallen, but it's not earth shattering. It's nothing to call home excited about, but it is a very well executed story, managing lots of different characters from different point of views.
hmm
And I think he would give it that grounding there, and Joe Abercrombie would do a great job with the dialogue and the characters there. And obviously, it's never going to happen. But
yeah, probably not. I could see when and if something happens to George that they might start looking seriously at that, like Sanderson did with Wheel of Time. But I just don't know. As long as they don't get Sanderson to finish A Song of Ice and Fire, I'm good.
I don't think he would do it now.
Yeah, he wouldn't.
It's beyond that now. But also, he's not the right author for it.
Yeah, he's definitely not. I got to thinking, now I have not read R. Scott Baker yet, but I got to thinking that he's definitely in that same darker, grim, dark setting like George is. He might be a good fit for it as well, but I don't know. I haven't.
No, I'm not. I'm not familiar, and the problem is, the more you talk to people and the more you delve into it, there's so much out there to read now that you never keep up, right? I sort of mentally try
Yeah,
to keep a TBR because I don't like buying 50 books and having them empty. Everything that is there has been read. Uh, my
yeah,
TBR is about 2 books. Some people buy books just seemingly for the sake of buying. If you're into book buying, that's a different hobby from book reading. The way I
yeah,
say it. But there's so much stuff that I've become aware of that it's like, oh, I would like to read that. Oh, I would like to read that. I would like to read that, and I'll never finish.
yeah. Same here. The TBR is just endless, and it's always going to grow no matter how many books we want to read. I don't think we'll ever finish.
And I
Um,
don't know. Yeah, sorry. And
no,
I don't
go
know
ahead.
how much. I don't know how much is the hype of certain booktubers that actually make a living out of being a booktuber, and they actually have the time to. How much is hype that this is the latest book that has come out there, and how much is merited praise for the books. Um, Things like Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter. All of a sudden now, who's the Asian author? The lady, is it sort of Kagan or
Oh, ML Wong, yeah.
yeah? There was that. Then a couple of years ago, I think Nicholas Ames with the um,
Oh, the book.
Kings of the Wild. Uh,
Nicholas Ames. Yeah, sorry. I'm getting
yeah,
mixed up. Yeah, right.
Kings of the Wild was the big rage as well some time ago. So like,
hmm
what is actually good and what is actually just hype? And now Ken Liu as well. There's so many names and so many authors now.
Yeah, yeah. That's true. It is hard to pick out the good stuff from the hype. I I watched all the hype for Rage of Dragons, and I won't talk much about it because people are sick of hearing this from me. But I did not like Rage of Dragons. It was way overhyped to me, but a lot of people love it. So um, yeah, Toddy is right. I don't think George wants anyone to finish it. Um, I've heard that from him too. And that's fine. Even if something happens to George and it never gets finished, I still absolutely love the books. I think it's a fantastic series.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's one of the very few books series where you're reading something different and special, isn't it? I think
Right.
is it the moment when Eddard gets killed? To me, that was like, this cannot happen. Like, he's clearly the good guy. He's the guy we're meant to root for, and he's the guy we're meant to follow. He's got no business getting killed. Ooh,
Hmm.
have I? All right, I thought I got disconnected there. Okay.
Yeah, I think there's something going on with both of our connections. Maybe I'm not sure.
Yeah. No, I was saying that when Eddard gets killed, that's, that that wasn't meant to happen. That
Right,
and then you're reading something different, and that no one is safe, and you are in a different world. It's almost like a paradigm shift.
right. Yeah, it's definitely in a league of its own, and I don't think anybody could have the voice that Martin does when he's writing. So uh, yeah, Jim says the same thing. He's dead set against allowing other people to write his sequels. Yeah, makes sense. Good for him. Stick to that. It's probably for the best.
Yeah, but that's my criticism of him, is that he's become a businessman. He's a brand. Um, he said in a video that he spent meetings discussing and arguing about how much money he gets for the TV show, even to the point of how much money he was getting for the key rings and the merchandise and the stuff like that.
Oh
So
wow.
so clearly, he's just not. Writing has become. He probably, I don't know. Probably writing only gets him a tenth of the money that he makes. Um,
Right.
he's got enough money now that he's bought a whole theater in Santa Fe, in the town where he lives. I think he's reopening an old train line that used to run through there. He's got basically fuck off money,
Yeah.
and now writing is something he does in his spare time.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. He's definitely got an empire going.
Yeah. I don't know, man. And then Neil Gaiman chipped in, when he said, "Oh, George Martin's not your bitch. He can write whenever he wants, however much he
Exactly.
wants and stuff." But then someone made the point that at some point, someone in his publishing house must have given him an advance for these books, so he does owe, um, those books at least to the publishers, because he's been
Right.
paid for it. So yeah, I don't know. It's just because I really love those books. I really enjoy them, and I think they could be Lord of the Rings for the 21st century. Like
Oh yeah.
the impact and the staying power of those books, uh, has been huge, and that story deserves a proper ending, not like we got with the TV show.
Right. Yeah, it does deserve a proper ending, and I think you're right. It can definitely stand up as a modern day Lord of the Rings if it gets finished, because yeah, it's one of my all time favorite book series, and I've enjoyed House of the Dragon or Fire and Blood, which House of the Dragon was based off of. I really enjoy Fire and Blood. I haven't finished it yet, but I've enjoyed it, and A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms I thought was a um, were great little stories about Dunk and Egg. So um,
Yeah, I don't even, but I don't know if he's missing a point, or more likely, I am missing the point. But his his legacy is A Song of Ice and Fire.
right,
Why wouldn't you just finish it? Just give it your, you know, just sit down every day. And if he wrote, if he had sat down and written 2 pages a day, it would have been finished by now.
yeah, he does. You're right. He does have a whole lot of other irons in the fire that are competing for his attention. So that probably has a lot to do with it. He probably doesn't make a lot of time to focus on the writing. Although I know he is writing, but it's just going a lot slower. So
Yeah, but I actually bothered once. I tallied up from his different blog posts and stuff how much he's written. He's not even halfway through The Winds of Winter. Considering
yeah,
how many chapters he's hinted at there's going to be, and how much he's reading or whatever, it's just, it's not gonna come up. It's not gonna come out in 2023. That book for sure. Not
yeah,
even 20.
probably not. I do think we'll eventually get the Winds of Winter. I'm a little bit more skeptical on A Dream of Spring, but I do feel like we'll get the Winds of Winter eventually. Chadi is right. Probably has some writer's block too. Yeah,
But even so, right? There's so much hunger for those books that they will be successful no matter what. I think people just want the story to be done, um,
yeah,
and he knows how it's all gonna end, so he just needs to get it done.
yeah. That's true. He is. Yeah, Jim said he's 74. Yeah, I knew he was like right around there, but I didn't know what age. And yeah, he's probably getting to the point too where he's just tired. Um, so it's not an excuse necessarily, but it's. I think it's definitely something to. Uh, I think it's definitely a reality. And he does want it to be good. Yeah, yeah. When the ending is bad, the fans aren't happy, and I think he wants the ending to be good for him too, because I can tell he has um, a high ceiling for where he wants the quality to be.
Mm.
And I think if he had been more involved with Game of Thrones, it would have been better quality at the end. But he was just focused on so many other things. So he
Yeah,
he'll make the ending for his books good if he gets there.
and I think maybe he's been he's been writing and grinding for so long that he's reaped the success. He's become successful, or he's been recognized fairly late in his life.
Hmm.
He's not an author like Sanderson, maybe like Stephen King, people that gained the recognition much earlier. He was writing TV shows for many years. He was writing other books for many years. And if he's 74 now, I think the first Game of Thrones book, he must have been published, what, 20 years ago, maybe? It must have
Yeah,
been
yeah, it came out in 1991 or something like that, I think. The
that
first
that
one.
long ago. That long ago, but the books were slow burners. It wasn't really until the TV show came out
Yeah,
that he hit the big time. So it's been a long time coming for him, and maybe he's just enjoying the money and everything that comes with it, and fair enough. But
yeah, true.
yeah, don't know. It's a
Yeah,
shame.
yeah. Well, I think we'll eventually at least get one more book from him, and I know he's planning to write this a second Fire and Blood book or another one of those. So we shall see. But
That just annoys me. Whenever I see him doing something else other than writing Winds and Dream of Spring, I just get annoyed.
yeah, yeah, a lot of people do. A lot of fans aren't happy about it for sure. But eventually,
Yeah.
what do you do for work, Jose? What's your primary job?
I I am a secondary maths teacher, so I teach
Oh,
maths.
that's right. You said that earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, kids 12 to 18. So, but because I got my training qualification and I started my teaching career in the UK. Here in Spain, I work at a British school within Spain,
Okay.
and so does my wife. So it's a private school, and that's where my kids go, purely because I get the tuition for free. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to afford by any stretch of the imagination. But it sort of makes sense for us. Our kids are bilingual. They got both nationalities, and we are all on the same timetable. All four of us. We get all the family holidays on the same days at the same time. So as a family, it works quite nicely to all be doing the same thing at the same time.
Yeah. Well, that's good that's good that you work in the same school and I guess roughly the same hours. And
Yeah, I mean the I suppose the fear of the unknown is what's going to happen if I have to teach my children in the future. And not only will I be teaching my children, I'll be teaching their friends.
oh,
And
true.
I know them all, and I hang around with the parents and stuff like that, and what's going to happen in the future. And if it's not me who teaches them, it's going to be my wife. So,
Right.
but on the other hand, keeping a closer eye on them, and making sure they do the right thing. So, I don't know. What did you do?
I work in insurance. I started in call centers, unfortunately, but I've now moved up to chat support. So I just take virtual chat all day long. And when I'm not working on chats, I have time to read. So it's kind of nice.
Right.
Yeah. I guess, do you find that you have uh, a decent amount of time to read in your line of work, or?
No, not at work. Not at all. No.
Well, not at work, yeah, of course, but like,
No, the thing is, I have to make up. I got to find my time. So um, I get up at 6 in the morning every day, and I might squeeze 30, 40 minutes of reading in the morning when the
mhm,
house is quiet, the kids are still sleeping. So I'll get up, make a cup of coffee, and I just sit down in the kitchen and read for a bit in the morning. And then the kids start arriving, and then you get busy with making breakfasts and all that kind of stuff.
right,
And then if I'm lucky, I'll get a bit of reading time in the evening. But when I get home um, in the afternoons, my wife's like, your children are there. So it's like, wash them, dinner, homework, all that kind of stuff. And then because I like running, so I run maybe every other day. So then once the kids are all bathed and ready to go to bed, then I'll go for a run in the evenings. So sometimes, I don't get to sit down until 9:30, almost 10 in the evening. And when you're getting up at 6, it doesn't leave you much time
that's
in
true.
between. But that's if I want to have a YouTube channel, if I want to have a job and a family and read and run and play Call of Cthulhu, and you have to give up stuff.
Very true.
I do have the things I would like to do because it is what it is, and you got to pick and choose what you want to do. And unfortunately, all the things I enjoy doing are fairly time consuming. So
Yeah, same here. I can definitely relate to that. That's one reason I consider myself very lucky to have a job right now that allows me time to read and do a few of these other things. Uh, in fact, they even say if you've got time, feel free to do whatever you like. So I'm like, okay. um, so that's been nice. But yeah, I can imagine being a teacher and with all that entails, and then family time. It does make it hard to fit everything in.
yeah, I'm sort of gleefully watching from the distance all these young whippersnapping YouTubers. I say, just wait until you got kids and see how your monthly recap goes down from 12 books to 2 if you're lucky. So uh, But
Yeah.
it is what it is. It's just a hobby. I don't even know why I started it. But why did you start the channel?
I started it as a hobby too, so that I would have people to talk about books with. Um, Not a lot of my friends are big readers. Uh, my kids used to be, but as they've gotten older, they don't read as much as they used to. I can talk with my daughter about books quite a bit, but for the most part, uh, I didn't have a lot of friends or family to talk to about books, or at least not books that I enjoy reading.
Right.
So yeah, so that's why I started the channel, and that's my favorite part about being a booktuber is having the community that loves to chat about the same things you do. So
Yeah, I didn't know what it was. Um, so I remember I discovered what Booktube was before we moved back to Spain from the UK. Um, and my wife was like, "Oh, you could do that." And I was like, "It's all done. It's all there already."
mhm.
Um, and I started it, but I didn't know about this whole aspect of being able to talk to people, have these kind of conversations, and that's definitely the big plus about it. Like the biggest benefit about it is what we're doing now. It's not, I've noticed my least successful videos, if any of them are any successful, are the book reviews. Uh,
Yeah,
People are much more interested in any seemingly controversial opinion you may have about a topic or an author or a book or whatever it is. Um, the thing that people are least interested about is whatever you got to say about a book, which I find weird.
yeah, it is really strange, isn't it? Yeah, I've experienced that as well. There's not a ton of activity on book reviews. That there've been a few exceptions, but for the most part, yeah, not people don't really tend to want to talk about books or to watch you talk about a book. Yeah, to do a book review. So
Yeah, and I don't want to make the kind of content that is popular now. There's a lot of channels and videos they just make a living out of bashing the Rings of Power or the Wheel of Time TV show.
hmm
I don't want to make that sort of thing. I'm not afraid to say I didn't like something and these are my reasons, but
right.
I haven't got the time or the inclination to be posting a video every other day saying how rubbish something is, because that's not, I don't think that's a healthy attitude either. Um,
Right. I get that. Chadia says she watches reviews after finishing a book. Yeah, that does, and that makes sense. I do the same thing a lot of times because I want to avoid spoilers. So
yeah,
yeah, yeah, I go back to the old reviews as well. Yep.
yeah, that's true, because I find it difficult to, if I wa- if I want to discuss a book, if I want to do a review of it, I have to talk about what's in the book. I cannot
Mhm.
not a spoiler for you, because then what am I talking about? All I'm saying is I liked it, or I didn't like it, but why? Oh, I don't want to spoil it. Like, I don't know. You have to go into it and you have to unpick it and go through it. Um, Although I guess Steve Donahue will disagree with me. He's got a very good video about how to do book reviews, and obviously he makes a living out of it. But um, we're here for the discussion.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I don't know if I've seen that video of his on how to do a book review.
It's definitely there, and it's interesting and it's enlightening and it's educational. Um, and I picked up a couple of things from it. But equally, I don't know. I just say what I think, and I'm hardly ever. I don't know. Did you script any of your videos, or did you just sit down and free flow about it?
I used to do a complete free flow, but lately I've been doing a basic outline so that kind of the things I want to talk about, and then I free flow from there.
Yeah. Same here. I mean, sometimes I will have the piece of paper in front of me because I want to make sure I hit certain points, and inevitably sometimes I forget mentioning something, but it's like, okay, that's good enough. I don't want to have to go back and re-edit this or that or
Right.
the other. Um, but yeah, I don't know who are your favorite booktubers out there. Who are the people that you really rate about what they do?
Wow, that's a tough one. Because I watch a lot of booktubers. That's another thing that takes up my time, and I have a lot of booktubers that I watch regularly. Um, there's a few that I watch pretty much every video they put out. Baron is one from Your Brain on Books. Um, Dan from Treebird's Book Reviews. Um, let's see. Kay from Kay's Hidden Shelf, or Kayla, actually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, and but then there's a bunch of others that uh, maybe I don't watch all of their videos, partly because the book reviews, I don't want to get spoilers for certain books, so I might not watch those videos, but then I'll go back and watch them later after I read the book. So yeah, there's so many though. It's hard to keep track of all my favorites.
No, I mean, I've got that problem. I don't have the time to keep up with everyone.
Yeah,
Um, I cannot get home at the end of the day and then start watching 20 people's videos, which I feel bad about. I think I feel like I should watch more of what people do and put out there, but just physically, I haven't got that time. Um, because I feel like I don't know if you feel that need to reciprocate when someone subscribes to your channel. You gotta subscribe to their channel. It feels like doing that sort of thing. Um,
yeah, I can understand that. It does kind of feel like you're almost obligated to that sometimes. Um, so yeah, and the whole sub for sub mentality, but I've tried not to go in that direction. Like, if I subscribe to somebody, I never expect them to come subscribe to me, and vice versa. I don't subscribe to everybody, but unless I feel like I'm really going to watch their content over and over again, or watch everything they put out, or do my best to. So,
yeah,
but there is that thing. We're all vying for subs, and so we want to. You're gonna slip down. All right. Sorry, my cat's gonna fall out of my lap here. There we go. There is that kind of thing where you want to sub and support everybody. So
yeah. Although there's some people, there's some people that I've subscribed because I actually disagree with what they say, right? And I'm
mhm,
commenting that, and I'm trying to not that I'm trying to get a reaction, but I'm trying to engage with them.
sure,
But
yeah,
I don't get any. It's like some people don't want to have that exchange of disagreeing opinions, and I find that frustrating. And I've sort of ended up giving up on them. But not going to name names, but there was this one booktuber, and she put a video out there, and I was like, oh, this is. And whenever most of the time when I've disagreed, they may reply once, but then that's the extent of the exchange. I will go back and then subsequent comments I've made, they just get totally ignored. Um, I find that upsetting because other people, whenever I commented and I've disagreed, they would happily engage and discuss, which, like we said before, is what it's all about.
right.
I'm not putting this out there to get a wave of people agreeing with me, and I don't need that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think it's maybe,
that makes sense.
I think it's maybe the younger crowd that maybe react like that. I think mostly it's us middle-aged men that when we find someone disagreeing with us, we're not scared, or we're not sort of reluctant to come back and enter the arena, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I always enjoy a good discussion and dialogue back and forth, and so yeah, but yeah, a lot of people don't as well. Chadia says she doesn't have a booktube, so no subs needed. Well,
No,
I'd have said to you if you had one, Chadia, because
I don't think
I really enjoyed Chadia's input on a lot of the videos and discussions. So
she's always there. She's more active than some booktubers.
yeah, yes, she is. That's for sure. In fact, she said, commenting on your Fits and Fool review, you started with a spoiler in the first 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Yep, that was one video I saw it pop up the other day, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna have to come back to that because I've only read the first two Farseer books so far.
Right.
But
I There's a series that for me has got better and better
I've heard
um,
that.
as it went along. When I read the first trilogy, I was like, "Nah, this is a 6 out of 10." It's just, but later on, um, and it's interesting because I don't think she meant to write such a long series. Farseer was meant to be its own thing, but the fact that she managed to extend it all and link it all together and thread it so well is testament to what a good writer she is.
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard that, and I'm very excited to get more into the series. I eventually I should finish. Oh, you still there? Eh, hello.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay. I lost the screen for a minute. I hit a wrong button or whatever. Um, I eventually want to finish the Farseer and then move on into the rest of the series. I'm very excited for the live ship traders. I've heard so many good things about that one.
Yeah, to me that's the best out of the whole thing. I was debating whether to read it at the time because I'm sure if you're enjoying Farseer, you enjoy those characters, Fitz and the Fool, so much
Hmm.
that to think that you've got a trilogy in between before you get back to them, it feels like, why? You just want to continue and see what happens to them. But Live Ship is the best kind of unit within the whole series, and events in Live Ship matter a lot for the whole series. So don't skip a book. You gotta go and do that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't plan to skip any of them. Um, yeah, Chadia says if you don't have a booktube, you have time to watch booktube videos.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, it's hard to balance. But yeah, I've been very impressed with Hob. In fact, Royal Assassin is probably my book of the year so far, anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
I didn't rate the ending, and that's what annoyed me about Farseer. It's like the ending, I felt cheated out, but then later on I understood why it ends the way it does, and I've got no gripes after. I think the series still not perfect. This has got some things that I didn't like and felt a little bit um, childish or not that well executed. But overall, I think it's difficult to finish a long series in a satisfying manner. And
Yeah.
probably back to George Martin, that's why he's struggling. Um, Lightbringer series, I don't know if you've read it, but that
Mm.
kind of fizzled out. What else of what I've read recently may go in that direction? I'm not sure where the whole First Law universe with Joe Abercrombie is going. I'm not entirely sure there's an overarching thread there. It is tricky. It is tricky.
Yeah, it can be. I can imagine working on a large series like that, trying to tie up all the loose ends and trying to make it feel like a satisfying ending. I'm sure that's difficult. I have heard that about the final book in Farseer, but I've heard in hindsight, like you said, it does get better and it makes more sense. And I've heard that about Lightbringer as well, that the ending wasn't quite what everybody wanted. So
Well, the ending, mini spoiler here. So you read the last book and it ends, and you may like it or not like it, you may think it's good or not, whatever. And you know those last blank pages that you get in a book before the back cover, right?
yeah,
In one of those, there's a weird link to a website. And if you type that on your browser, it takes you to the true ending of the series.
really.
Yeah. And then, so you get a paragraph, and it's like, are you sure you want to continue reading? And then you scroll down, it's like, are you really sure? And then you scroll down, it's like, are you really, really sure? And fucking just take me there. And then you get the true ending of the series, which is a total, turns everything on its head. And I don't know if that's an attempt, a sort of meta writing or engaging with your audience a bit more, or it's just he was too scared to make that the actual ending of the books, and then you got an option of which ending you're gonna go with. I don't
Right.
quite understand what the intention was there.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to do it for sure. Stephen King did that with the Dark Tower. He
I've
had
heard, yeah. Have you read The Dark Tower?
I have, yeah, I read the whole series, and I won't go
Okay,
into spoilers, but I will say there's two different endings.
because I've got no interest on reading The Dark Tower, but I heard really weird things about the ending. He writes himself in the story and something else.
He does, yeah. Yeah, it's very weird. It's kind of off-putting, but I liked it. Overall, I really enjoyed the series, and I liked both endings in their respective perspectives.
So hang on, but you get both endings in the books, or do you have to go somewhere else to get the second alternative ending?
Oh, no, you get both endings. It'll give you one ending, and then he has a couple of paragraphs saying, you can stop now or you can move forward, and then the book continues on and gives you the final ending. So, yeah, he tells readers right off the bat in a very meta sort of way, you can stop here and you'll be fine, or you can read and find out what actually happens.
But
So
but
it's interesting.
but who's not going to read that second ending?
Exactly. It's
How?
one thing to click on a link and you're like, oh, okay, that's cool. It's a website I can go to. But it's another thing to have the book right there with you and you're like, well, I might as well, I'm a completionist. I might as well just finish it.
Because how long is the series?
7 books.
So
Well,
who
eight
re-
if you actually 8 if you count the novella that the final book he wrote. So
so yeah, because who reads 7 books and then leaves the last 200 pages there?
mhm,
That's just I don't
yeah.
know. Stephen King, I've got very mixed emotions about him. I don't
I
fully
do as
get it.
well. I
Like
do as well.
I don't think he's a horror writer, for instance. I don't think what he's famous for I would call horror.
Yeah. He's a story writer at its core, and some of those stories happen to be happen to be more horror filled. Some of them happen to be fantasy. Some happen to be a little sci-fi. But at the end of the day, he's a storyteller. Yeah.
Yeah, and I find all his stories sort of take place in this sort of unknown point in time, because there is no, what I find, that there's no real point of reference. You don't know if the books are happening in 1985 or in 1999. Maybe it's purposely, there's nothing there to really give you specific time point when the books are happening.
Right.
So they could be in this sort of generic early 80s setting, or they could be in a much more sort of current present day time, because there's very little to place the books at a particular point in time.
Mm-hmm.
My perception, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I agree with that. There is some ambiguity there. Um, he's been very hit or miss for me. I really love the Dark Tower series as a whole. Um, Salem's Lot is my favorite Stephen King book that I've read.
Right.
Um, I almost DNF'd it. I would have if it hadn't been for somebody recommending the audiobook to me. And I may end up doing the audiobook for The Stand as well, because The Stand seems like a large enough book that I might DNF it.
Yeah, I didn't rate The Stand, although I was appreciative that it's the only book I've read where you end up in this sort of zombie apocalypse kind of world, and it tells you how that happened. Usually you're just thrust into this setting, whereas The Stand explains how you got there. And the thing about it, and I've been toying with the idea of making a video about it, is that no one talks about the ending of that book, about what happens there. No one wants to address it. Did you
Oh,
read?
are you talking about the controversial stuff? The underage orgy, basically. Yeah. Yep.
Like,
I know.
why does no one address that? And what a messed up, weird, like the kids are lost in some sort of underground maze, and the only way they've got to get out is they decide to run a train on the girl. It's like, what the actual, where did this come from? And no one talks about it.
Yeah,
And
that was disturbing. It did not need to be there.
and of and of course, no movie adaptation is ever going to incorporate that, right?
Yeah, well, and at the time that he published it, I'm surprised the publisher let it slide. To be
Well,
honest with you.
well, I think that probably at the time, in general, society was a bit less sensitive about issues as we are today. Probably he wouldn't get away with doing that
Yeah,
now, would he?
that's very true. Chadia says she was a teen when she read it, so she didn't mind. That makes sense.
No, I like what.
Hey, Derry, glad to have you.
And I mean, I wasn't a teenager when I read it, and I wasn't. I mean, it's obviously a book. It's a fiction, but I was like, oh, what what's the reason for this? Why is this here? It didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, Derry says it's thematic, it's inappropriate, but it does belong. I can see that. I know what he was going for, and I can see why it's there. Yeah, it was just a little bit, yeah, off-putting, but I see that, Derry, for sure. She says the audiobook for The Stand is really good. I may go that direction. But yeah, that ending of it was definitely different. And yeah, you know you're never going to see it in any adaptation.
Nah.
Beverly's fear was her approaching womanhood, and all of the fears were fought except hers. So the circle magic didn't work. Oh, okay. Hmm. Okay, yeah, I can see that. Yeah, it was still a very weird thing to include, but I can see what you're saying. Yeah. As a 14-year-old, I totally understood why it was there. Okay, yeah, yeah, okay, makes sense. Thanks. So I guess I would have had to read it as a teenager to appreciate it, huh?
Yeah,
Um,
maybe.
and a lot of my friends were reading it back in high school, around junior high and high school around that time. So I just I didn't get to any King books until I was an adult. So
No, I used to read them when I was every end of term at university. Like um I had like a 2-hour coach ride to the airport. Then I had to take the plane from the UK back to Spain, and then if I was flying to Madrid, I had another 5-hour coach ride to my hometown. So it was a classic book that I would pick up at a coach station or at the airport, and that I would read during the journey. So all the Stephen King books that I've got have been bought because I was traveling at the time. But my favorite one is Pet Cemetery. Pet
oh, okay,
Cemetery,
yeah,
to me, that ending, the story's got the structure of a short horror story, and it delivers an ending that is truly spine chilling, and to me that's the best he wrote. And then there were dads there that I didn't understand, like Firestarter, The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon. They were just weird. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know why that was called horror, but
yeah.
anyway.
Okay, interesting. I haven't read Pet Cemetery. I've been on the fence with it just because it seems very emotionally draining. Um,
Well, yeah, obviously, there are so many things that since becoming a parent, becoming a parent, that hit home a lot harder than they would have done before.
yeah, yeah, and I think that's one reason I've been kind of avoiding it. I may read it eventually, but oh yeah, yeah. As a dad, whew, I don't
Yeah.
know.
No, no, no.
Derry makes a good comment here. I don't know how Stephen King understood that fear. It's a super specific premenstruating girl fear. Interesting. Yeah, he's got some unique insights that you wouldn't necessarily expect from a guy. I will give him that. He's got a unique window into humans in general that I don't think a lot of other authors are able to latch on to, in my opinion, from what I've read.
Yeah, I and the other reason I partly dislike him is because I've seen him in an interview be dismissive about H.P. Lovecraft, and to
Oh,
me,
okay.
that's sacrilege. Because nothing comes close to the enjoyment that I've derived from reading, you know, the H.P. Lovecraft stories. It's
Okay.
to me that's unsurpassed. I love that what he did, what he created,
Yeah.
and I've read a lot of people that have sort of written in his vein and tried to expand and elaborate on that world, but they never come close to the original.
What I read of Lovecraft, I really, excuse me, I really like. Um, Not my favorite by any means, but I do like H.P. Lovecraft, and I've liked a lot of modern usage of Lovecraftian themes. I have not read all of Lovecraft stuff, but what I have read, I've quite enjoyed. I've not seen that interview with Stephen King, so I don't know what he said, but
It was something along the lines of, it was cool when I was 14, but then I quickly grew out of it, and
oh,
you know,
interesting.
something like that.
Hmm.
But I can't remember the name of the podcast now. But there was a podcast, this another horror podcast that started off as two guys doing read-throughs of all of Lovecraft's stories, and then eventually, when they ran out of material, they continued with all the stuff. But somewhere there in Spotify, there's a pretty good podcast with narrations of all his material, which I just think is great. And even the whole controversy about him being racist and all the stuff is fairly subtle. Like when I read it all as a kid, it completely passed me by. But I've realized I'm not the most attention to detail paying reader out there.
Yeah, the stories I've read of his, you're right. It is still somewhat subtle in his writing, although there are things that you catch that are like, oh yeah, that was a pretty xenophobic comment.
Yeah.
So it's there, but in his personal life, he was very, and I think that's what a lot of people latch on to, and that's why that's where the whole you know, art versus the artist thing comes in. Is, yeah, he was a horribly racist person, but he wrote very good fiction. And so, and he was also a product of his age. Not that that's an excuse, it isn't. But
No,
back then, uh, acceptance of people of other races and colors and things like that was not very prominent in his era. So,
no, and I think you are spot on. I've never understood the whole judging a piece of work without a historical context. I was talking about this last night when I was watching Matt's fantasy reviews, and he did a video on the most overrated fantasy series, and he threw in Lord of the Rings in there, and I was like, oh no, mate, like no, that's just impossible. Like Lord of the Rings can never be overrated because XYZ. And he said, oh, but it wouldn't hold up well against modern books or modern series. And I said, yeah, but it wasn't published in 2020. It was published in 1956. And you cannot hold Lord of the Rings against A Song of Ice and Fire or Stormlight or whatever you want, because it just wasn't. You can't do that sort of comparison.
mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't understand decontextualizing things, but and even so, I would have been the kind of person that Lovecraft would have derided in his stories, which he did, when he talks about the Hispanics living in the suburbs of New York and all the stuff. Don't care. He was still great. Still loved it. Got all his books in Spanish and in English, and I've read them many times over.
Yeah, he does have some really great stories. I will recommend. There's a book out there. It's a reimagining of the horror at Red Hook,
right?
Called The Ballad of Black Tom by Victor LaValle, and it is amazing.
Right.
Absolutely love it. In fact, I liked it better than the horror at Red Hook.
Okay.
So, but it's really good. And when I read the less horror centric, I think highly of. There's one here. King is problematic with politics. I don't see myself picking up Lovecraft at all now that we're aware of the bigotry he had. I can respect that, and a lot of people don't, because of that fact. A lot of people don't pick up J.K. Rowling because of some of her comments as well. So
yeah, that's another bit I don't get, because no matter what she may have said as a person, it certainly has not seeped through in her books. So you can happily read the books, and I don't want to enter the conversation about what she said or didn't say or whatever. But I thought the books are brilliant. I was a bit disappointed with the last book, but the first was it 7 books? I think the first 6 are brilliant. Are absolutely some of the best stuff I've read.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Harry Potter's a brilliant series, and I'll always love it. Um, and I want to reread it at some point. My kids have read it at least two times, maybe
Yeah,
more. And
I've read them all except for the last one. I've read them all 3 or 4 times, and
mm,
I was introduced to them when I was at university, and it was one of those things where I had work to do. I had to revise for exams, but I knew that all of that couldn't happen until I finished the book.
right.
Like it was that kind of, I couldn't put it down.
Hmm.
There were so many right things down there, um, and there's so many callbacks to those childhood classics of like the famous five, and the things she did, and popular culture and all the stuff that they're brilliant.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I agree with that point, Jose. Tolkien as an author didn't have 50 to 60 years of other fantasy to take inspiration from. Yep. Yeah, that's true. He could create quite a few new things around today, but yeah, he really brought popular fantasy into the limelight.
Well, I'm reading now the original Robert T. Howard Conan stories. They're not great at all. There's nothing there. They were clearly pulpy magazine stories to entertain teenagers, and that's all there is to them. So the state of fantasy before Tolkien was pretty much non-existent.
Right. Yep, exactly. Yeah, that I have not read any Robert Howard, but I've heard that Robert Howard has a lot of fans too, but I have not read any, and I don't know if I will. Derry got a laugh out of your comment. Not great. Uh, yeah, I'm sure they're very mixed in a lot of respects. For J.K. Rowling, I guess it okay seeps out in her later books. That's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I guess at some point, eventually, your personal beliefs can seep into your fiction. Like Narnia was very much it was designed as an allegory. So that's a case where it was intentional. And I think in some respects, Tolkien's Catholic background seeped into Lord of the Rings in a very minor way. Um,
But I've got no problem at all with people putting in their books whatever they want to put in.
right, exactly.
I think it's up to you then whether you like it or not, whether you want to
Mm.
pick it up or not. I think in this day and age, there's a lot of keyboard warriors. There, I think there's a lot of bored people. Um, I've heard people criticize what's his face, sort of Truth series,
Oh, Terry Goodkind.
Terry Goodkind, because he putting a lot of the sort of objectivist views in the books, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I
If
haven't
you
read any Terry Goodkind. He never actually really appealed to me, but a lot of people really like him. I would be one that yeah I would choose not to read things that are openly xenophobic or singling out a certain people group as at least if it's supposed to be set in our modern like in our world and things like that. That's just a little bit too close to home. And so yeah, but like you said, they can write it, and if people choose not to read it, that's fine. So
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We like I've got I don't know. I've got mixed emotions about what's happening today. Um, Obviously, as I said before, my wife is black. My kids are mixed race.
mhm.
I've lived in London for a long time, but So I've got no issues with people having different backgrounds, different experiences, and so on. But I think we're trying to change history a little bit, and that's something I'm a bit uncomfortable with. I come from a city in Spain that was the last city to be conquered back by the Christians from the Muslims.
Oh, okay,
So,
interesting.
so yeah, so like historically, we have a lot in my hometown. There's a lot of Muslim heritage in the architecture. The town design, buildings, everything, right?
Mhm.
And inside the cathedral, my hometown, there's a statue of the patron saint of Spain on a horse spearing a Moor. That's what happening. And on the 2nd of January, it was a local bank holiday, and we celebrated that the Christians kicked the Muslims out of the town, and
Mhm.
finally the whole Iberian Peninsula was Christian again, right? And that's what happened. And it's still in Spain. There's a lot of villages and towns where we celebrate Christians and Muslims and all that kind of stuff. But obviously, in the present day and age, celebrating that you're kicking out Muslims out of your town is not very politically correct. So now they've rebranded the whole thing as a meeting of the cultures, which is not what happened. Historically, they were just slayings. They were slayings of Arabs by the Christians and Christians by the Arabs. And now we're pretending that what happened on that date in 1492 was that these two cultures met and we get along and stuff. And it's not what happened. And I cannot wrap my head around that. I don't understand this changing of history.
Mm.
And I don't have the answer because I understand that we all need to get along, and I don't have an issue with that. But equally, I don't understand wanting to change history.
Yeah, I think part of it comes from uh, wanting to publicly denounce some of the more horrible aspects of our history, and some of it does end up revising history. I know with uh, trying to remember there was a statue in Virginia here in the U.S. that was taken down. I think it was General Lee because of everything that happened with the slavery and everything like that, and that was taken down way to make a statement of this is not who we are anymore. And I can appreciate that. I was glad when it got taken down, even though it's part of our history. It doesn't need to be a public spectacle of our history anymore, if that makes sense. It's not something that we need to raise up on a pedestal and have a statue glorifying it, saying, "Oh, there was this great man who, by the way, hated slaves and did different things like that." So I think there's merit to it, but I can see where it can go to the extreme of revising history, even. So
Yeah, I don't have the answers. I don't.
yeah,
I,
yeah, neither do I.
I don't know. I don't like it. Where is it? So is it somewhere in Romania? Because I got a friend there. And he told me that one day he went out for a run, and he just started running into a park, and then he found there all these statues from the communist times, all these statues of Lenin and all these old tanks and everything, and they just shot everything inside a park in Bucharest, sort of hidden it there, and again just pretend it never happened. And he said, well, you know, it did, and I think it is important to acknowledge what happened, but also to move on. No one needs to be held back by whatever happened in the past, but I don't think trying to ignore it or forget it is the right way to go about it either.
Right. Columbus Day was changed to Indigenous Peoples Day here in the U.S. Yeah, yeah. I like that too, because ultimately it's the indigenous people that were
That's
outed.
that's that's one that, as a Spanish person, blew me away when I found out all the hatred there is in the US for the figure of Columbus. I was like, oh, really? Why? Like, what was the? But I understand it, but it was a shock to discover that. Um,
I can understand that. Yeah, I'm sure it was. And for the longest time, I mean, growing up as kids, we were educated that Columbus was just this magnificent, fabulous figure who discovered the United States, or well, who discovered what would eventually become the Americas and things like that. And then as you grow up and you learn some of the things that actually happened, you're like, yeah, maybe that wasn't so great, especially for the indigenous people. So um, so yeah, I can understand your shock though, as a Spanish person, to find out some of the hatred and vitriol about that. Yeah, I get that. Um,
yeah, the thing that gets to me in there is how the English always get away scot free, because all of that being true, the fact is that the Spanish did mix with the indigenous people there, and we have all these words in the Spanish language to refer to the different mixes of races there. So a mulatto and a criollo and a whatever, they refer to the different kind of results of mixing a white European with an indigenous Indian, or the black Africans with the white Europeans, or the black Africans with the indigenous um, Americans there. So there was a lot more mixing. Whereas the English, I mean, look at what they did with the native Indians put them in reservations, kick them away, and
Absolutely.
they get away scot free. That it's like they never did anything wrong there. And the Spanish people, we get all this take and all this blame and whatever. It's like, oh,
There's becoming a lot more balance there though too in the U.S. People realizing the fault of the English, as well as the anyone who came in and kind of usurped the indigenous peoples are now being, it's becoming more public about what actually happened and why maybe it wasn't such a great thing.
yeah,
um,
clearly they had a better PR machine than the Spanish did at the time.
right. New Zealand created a new public holiday to celebrate the Maori New Year. Oh, that's cool. I like that. But we kept the holiday celebrating the colonization by document signing. Okay. Waitangi Day. Interesting. I haven't heard of either of that. That's cool to know. Thanks, Derry.
Mm,
Well, it has been, we're getting close to 2 hours and 45 minutes here.
yeah,
And what time is it there right now?
it's coming to 10:45 for me.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So yeah, I probably should be thinking about packing it in and going to bed.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I will definitely go ahead and we'll call this the end, but the end of a beginning. We'll say that because I'd love to have you back, Jose. This was a great discussion, and I'm really glad you could come on the channel with me.
No, no, and like I said before, I'm very grateful for your invitation, Charles. Thank you very much. I'm sorry we ended up talking about anything and everything that is not Booktube.
Hey, that's what this is for. It's about anything really. So
Brilliant. As no, anytime I can make it, anytime we consider, I'm more than happy to come again.
absolutely, yeah. You're welcome, Chadia. Thanks for coming. Oh yeah, the Dutch were
Yeah,
involved too. Yeah.
everyone was there.
Great to see you again, Jose. Cheers, Jerry.
Yeah,
Thank you so much,
good.
Jerry. Great to see you.
Yeah,
I've got
good to see.
Jerry coming on next week. So next week.
Okay. Yeah, no,
So
I'm glad to see she's back. She was able for a bit,
yeah,
and I need my Queen of the Otherlings to guide me through Robin Hood, because
yes. I like
talking.
that. Queen of the Elderlings. Yeah, that's
Oh,
good.
she definitely is. She definitely is. She's
Yes, yeah.
pointing me in many a right direction after my missteps in reading Elderlings. So yeah, brilliant.
Well,
All right, thank you, Chas, and thank you, everyone.
yeah, thanks for joining, everybody. We'll see you all later. And thank you again, Jose. Great talking with you. And make sure you read more books.